I really never thought I would make videos of this ilk. I really didn't. Don't worry, my next Young Justice video is fully written and I'll get to working on that very soon. But I've had some conversations with friends about the state of today's media, particularly in relation to beloved pre-existing IPs. And I did feel like, one, I had something to say about that, and two, I feel like I owe my regular viewers an explanation as to why there are certain things I won't cover on this channel. That's not to say stop making recommendations, please keep them coming in, but sometimes the answer will be, I'm not going to watch it because, as I've said before on this channel, I don't watch things I expect to disappoint me. And I've noticed something on YouTube and the wider media discourse that I believe is contributing to why a lot of the media we're getting right now is either low effort, low quality, or often both. It's all to do with marketing. Okay, I'm gonna have to back up my point a little bit here because this happened purely by accident and it all started with advertising. Fox News host Sean Hannity came under fire for his comments on the Roy Moore accusations, which I won't go into here because it's not really relevant, but do please check out the video and articles about it. There were many people who took objection to this, and Keurig, which had previously sponsored Hannity's show, decided to pull advertising, and they did this, again, quite by accident, very publicly. And the internet exploded with people destroying their own Keurig coffee machines in protest. I think most of you will know off the bat how stupid an idea this was because it's their own freaking property. How could they possibly have believed that this would hurt the business? But all the while, savvy marketing executives were watching all this unfold and they noticed a spike in Keurig sales coinciding with all this. And the reason for that was that Keurig took a stand. Even though they didn't, it was just the simple thought process that supporting someone who had, for whatever reason, gotten themselves on the wrong side of a large part of their consumer base was probably not a good business decision. Ah, the more innocent days of 2017 where it was actually that simple. So thanks to this, you had people on one side considering this a very ethical decision, and anyone among those people who were considering getting a coffee machine, well, Keurig was immediately put in their good graces. And on the other side, you had people destroying Keurig's branded coffee machines on camera and tagging them in the posts so Keurig's name was everywhere. Now, I've never really believed that old adage that all publicity is good publicity, but I do believe that not all negative publicity is bad publicity. I even know this from my own experience because I recently watched a very well-made and well-researched YouTube video about how Disneyland parks are pricing their normal customers out of the market and focusing on their ultra-wealthy clientele. And my first thought upon watching this video was not, well, that's absolutely terrible. How dare Disney do this to its customers? It was, I wonder how much a ticket to Disneyland Paris costs. And I looked it up because I remembered how much fun I had in Tokyo Disneyland when I lived over there. The price was far too expensive, I never could have gone anyway, but you get what I'm saying. It was the name Disneyland that triggered that happy memory for me and made me go looking. Until, of course, I shook myself and realised, what the hell am I doing after what I've just heard? So in the case of Keurig, you had people who knew about the issue wanting to give Keurig their business for the stand they took, and on the other hand, you had people plastering Keurig's name everywhere so people who didn't care about the issue, i.e. most people, and we'll get to that, had Keurig's name in their head. It is genuinely quite funny how stupid people can be to think that destroying their own property with Keurig's name on it on camera for all to see would do anything other than help the company, let alone hurt it. And as I said, savvy marketing executives had their eyes trained on this soap opera and soon everybody got in on the action. Nike got in on the action, and then, like clockwork, people started burning their Nike trainers. And this is how people whose job it is to make money realize that it doesn't really matter what they're saying as long as they're talking about your product. Okay, now we're going to talk about how this marketing tactic made its way into media and how I believe it is making media worse. And just a quick disclaimer, I am not going to be espousing any political views in this video nor any of my other videos because I literally can't. In my profession, I can't display my political views publicly because they could be taken as representative of the organisation. So please don't presume to know what I believe from this video or any of my other videos or ask in the comments because I genuinely can't tell you. The only thing I will be saying about politics is how they are being used in our current media to sell something and how the people that disagree are the ones being used to sell it. It's basically the same principle of getting people to talk in order to get them to do your marketing for you. I'm not really going to be talking about writers here because for all the low effort, low talent content that gets produced, they may believe what they are espousing. I'm not going to presume to know either way. But the people above them, the people who hired them, do not care.
And despite this company holding up a giant sign that says, "I am a company. I do not care about you. I do not personally know you. Give me money, please."
They are greenlighting the projects they know will get people angry and upset and talking and clicking and retweeting and commenting. Think about it. Imagine you're a YouTuber and you see a trailer for something you know in your bones is going to be awful. You watch it, you make a YouTube video about it. Much like the people who burned the Nikes and destroyed the coffee machines, you are plastering the name of the product you hate everywhere. Statistically, your regular audience is going to agree with you on most things, so you're not really convincing anyone of anything.
Loads of Money ran in the mid-1980s on a popular Friday night sketch comedy show on British television. It struck a nerve. But here's the strange thing. If you ask Harry Enfield about Loads of Money's legacy, about what he thinks he accomplished by speaking truth so boldly to power, you know what he says? He says it made no difference.
You know, I mean, it's great fun to do, but generally, you know, it's just about questioning what's there because we're allowed to question what's there, so we do. But it doesn't ever change anyone's mind.
People who disagree with you are going to watch it to help the cause. A significant amount of people will have already seen the show, hated it, and watched your video because they want to hear the opinions of other people who also hated it. Or never had any intention of watching it to begin with and just clicked on your video because they wanted to hear you trash it because they hate what it represents. You are, in a very real sense, preaching to the choir. I think what a lot of fans, myself included, tend to forget is that the majority of people who consume media are not fans. And I don't mean that in the gatekeeper sense of being a real fan or not. No, I hate that. What I mean by fan is being heavily invested in one way or another in the media you're watching. What I mean by fans are the people who think about the media, who get into in-depth discussions about it, who buy the merch, who write fan fiction, make fan art, who make YouTube videos about it. Now that doesn't mean you have to adhere to all the above criteria, and it certainly doesn't mean the world is split into fans and non-fans. You may be a fan of something and you may casually consume another piece of media that has its own dedicated fan base. But consumers of shows and movies and really any other media that can be considered mainstream are going to be primarily made up of casual viewers. And I really hate the terminology that's going around about these things right now, but I believe they are called normies. Most people who watch shows that have a loyal and dedicated fan base are not part of that loyal and dedicated fan base. They just want something to entertain them after the kids have gone to bed. Before cinemas had to be put on life support, most people would see it as a day out or a night out, something to relax them after the work week. Most people aren't going to go home and write essays about the media they enjoy like fans do. And I think fans do often forget that when they're talking about the impact of decisions made in their favoured media properties. So let's go back to the imaginary you who just made a YouTube video about the thing you knew you were going to hate. Much like the Nike burners and coffee bashers, when it comes to people who are disengaged about the issue, all you are doing is putting the name everywhere. So someone can write an article about how horrible the fan base is, and someone can tweet in support of you, and someone can make another YouTube video surrounding the article. You're doing their marketing for them. Many things are contributing to cinemas dying right now. They've been on the decline for a long time, but I think a lot of factors have just sped up the process lately. And I have to eat my words a little bit because I made a video around Martin Scorsese's idea that Marvel movies are not cinema and they are destroying the communal experience of watching movies. And while I do believe that what he predicted needn't have come to pass, it in fact did. But while advances in home viewing, streaming services, and the pandemic all brought this about, I do believe the final nail in the coffin was this new way of producing content cheaply and marketing it via online discourse. This is the main crux of my point in this video. One of the reasons we're seeing such a huge shift towards streaming rather than cinema, and the reason what we are getting is of lower and lower quality, is that with movies, there is a far greater risk of losing money if your product sucks. People go and see it opening weekend, reviews are written, word of mouth gets about that it's not great, and you get a drop off in people going to see it. A movie in cinemas is still being sold while it's being played for audiences. Streaming content, on the other hand, is sold very differently. A lot of people lately have been asking why the Obi-Wan Kenobi show looked so cheap. The answer is because it was. It was only given a budget of 90 million, which sounds a lot, but compare that to blockbuster movies. Hell, even streaming shows of a similar ilk on the same service were given more. Why is this? I've heard people say that it doesn't make sense that they would put so little money into a show concerning potentially the most popular character in Star Wars history, undeniably one of them. I say, yes. It makes perfect sense, because the name Obi-Wan Kenobi was enough to sell the show on its own. Unlike a movie where word of mouth will get around that it's bad and box office sales will drop off, that is much less likely to happen on a streaming service because you've subscribed to a service. Word of mouth getting around that a show is bad is not as powerful when it comes to affecting subscriptions. The name Obi-Wan Kenobi might have been enough to get people who were curious to subscribe, but the show being bad is not really enough to get many people to unsubscribe because they've bought the service, they've not bought a product. Yes, there are switched on people who will subscribe strategically with trial periods and then just cancel their subscriptions once what they've wanted to see is over. But most people won't. Most people will keep the subscriptions because it's an easy way to stream Disney movies for their kids, or they want to see the next season of another show on the service, or they just plain forgot. And this actually happened to me. I was subscribed to Audible for so long and barely used the thing. Just unsubscribed last month. I lost so much money dithering on that. Ever wonder why the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie was cancelled and became a show? Yes, the flop of Solo was part of it, but all that did was seal in the lesson that it's much easier to lose money on movies than streaming shows. It brought about the lesson that if you have a recognisable character, you don't really have to risk a huge financial investment on it because people are going to watch it for name recognition alone, and by the time they do that, you've already gotten what you wanted from them. And word of mouth can only help you because angry fans are pushing your show into trending spots on YouTube and Twitter, whether they liked your product or not. This is my least favourite thing about this, because I've said this before to friends, the benefit of the doubt doesn't exist anymore. People are so willing to think the worst of you because of whatever side you've subscribed to. And people on both sides think that they must fight the opposite side because they are espousing terrible beliefs and they're destroying the culture and we must fight for the culture. These people actually think they're in a freaking war. And as we know, war makes compassionate creatures of us all. And it's making discourse worse and everyone is blaming the other side for it. They started it. No, they started it. No, they're the bad ones. No, they're the bad ones.
Again, Mummy! Again, again!
These talking points, particularly in media, have been purposefully put in front of you like a giant red flag in front of a bull in order to get you to charge. We are being, as practically every generation has been before us, manipulated by our media, just in a different way. Don't get me wrong, these disagreements would happen regardless, but the way media is being constructed now is fueling us and we are fueling it. And this is one of the reasons I believe George Lucas, for whatever faults he may have, is not only a genius, he's a freaking prophet. And sorry to anyone who doesn't know anything about Star Wars politics and therefore won't get the reference, but to all the culture warriors out there, you are the Republicans and the Separatists fighting for nothing in a war that was manufactured for you, and the Trade Federation and banking clans are making money off of all of us.
Gentlemen, the banking clan and Trade Federation are about business.
Remember when I stated that what Hannity said wasn't relevant? Well, none of what these people say is relevant to these businesses. None of these issues are relevant beyond how they can be capitalized upon. Well, voting with your wallet doesn't work anymore because the people you're voting against probably already have their grubby fingers in it. My solution is what I said to my family to get them to stop complaining about what they see in advertising. I would say, Dad, just don't talk about it. Don't do the exact thing they want you to do. Don't put it on Facebook. Don't put it on the family WhatsApp. Don't tell Jimmy down the pub. Just do not talk about it. Because you, and I use the collective you here, are their marketing tool. You tell Jimmy about the stupid shoe advert you saw, Jimmy's going to go home and tell Diane about it, and Diane might put it in her girlfriend's WhatsApp group, and Fran from the WhatsApp group might think that she could actually use a pair of trainers, and boom, you've just sold something for them. And that may sound like a lot of degrees of separation, but think about it. You tell 5 people, they tell 5 people, they tell 5 people, and within 20 odd cycles it's encompassed the earth. It doesn't matter if the person you're complaining to actually buys anything, the spread of information happens so fast that the likelihood is that you will have helped sell this product by airing your grievances. You are unknowingly marketing their product for them, and it is so insidious, but it's happening. Please stop. Now, I know that media is not the same as an actual product, but I do believe that if we stop marketing shitty shows, they will stop making them. At least purposefully in the vein that they currently are. There will always be shitty shows. And back to the imaginary YouTuber scenario, it doesn't matter if you pirated it or you went round to a friend's house who's already subscribed. Statistically, your content will have got someone else to subscribe. One of the makers of Game of Thrones said that Game of Thrones is the most pirated show in history, and that is better than an Emmy. It's words like these that show how powerful word of mouth can be. The people whose decisions actually matter don't care what you think as long as you're talking about it. So stop talking about it. This is not a perfect solution because I do believe that in order to have good media discourse, we need to talk about the triumphs and mistakes of writers and directors. So I'm certainly not saying never talk about movies or shows, etc. that you think are bad. If you go into a show in good faith and are disappointed, talk about it. Engage in the discourse, but just don't watch things you expect to disappoint you. And again, this is not a perfect line to draw. I certainly don't mean to list a certain amount of criteria that must be met in order to watch and talk about a show. The line is going to be different for everybody. And it's not a perfect line to draw. I'm not saying be cynical about what you choose to watch. Don't lose your optimism for media, even though I know it can be hard sometimes. I watched Young Justice Season 4 because I genuinely believed it was going to be good. From the marketing, they seem to have fixed a lot of the problems I had with the previous 2 seasons. Namely, that it was bloated with too many characters, that it was too plot-driven, the plot was too complicated, arcs weren't finished. They seemed to have found a decent solution to that by returning to beloved characters that we had in season 1 and focusing on a few key story arcs with a connecting through line. So I watched it, and it was bad. And I had a lot to say about the mistakes of the creators, but I had no problem putting its name out there because I believe the writers made this in good faith, and I watched it in good faith. Any laziness or incompetence on display was not the work of someone purposefully giving me a bad product. I do believe the writers genuinely care about this work, and I know they can write, and are making it because the fans have faith in it. So if my Young Justice videos turn people onto the show, I don't care. I've said my piece about it, and whatever people choose to do with that, I'm happy with. And it's frankly none of my business what people choose to do with it. Same with Titans. I kept watching that goddamn show because it kept getting me interested. It kept showing me little snippets of brilliance before going right back to being the mess that it actually is. I was going to stop after episode 5, which is usually my cutoff point, but then I saw that the next episode was concerning Jason Todd, who I love, and I thought, okay, give them one more episode. Let's see how they do with him. And it was great. Except for... plug. So I watched the rest of the season, and not so great. Then I saw that they were bringing in Deathstroke as the main season 2 villain, with pitch perfect casting, and I thought, okay, let's see what they do with this. And Deathstroke was great. Most of the show remained shit, but Aqualad was good, Jericho was amazing, and the Superboy episode was the best in the entire show. Every single time I wanted to give up on that goddamn show, it gave me something great. But by the end of season 2, I had given up hope that the decent elements were ever going to become something more, because the fundamentals of the show were entirely broken. I didn't watch season 3, nor will I ever, but I did have things I wanted to say about a show I had faith in, and I do believe the writers had faith in too, and clearly it still has fans. I would prefer that my videos didn't turn people onto the show because, 1, I think it fundamentally misunderstands the Titans, and 2, I don't think it's able to subvert them in any way that is meaningful or smart. But I don't think it's making media worse for existing. It's a show I believe is bad. I'm not being tricked into marketing it via my outrage. And same with Thor Love and Thunder. I did watch that in good faith because me and my dad always go and watch superhero movies together. It's kind of our thing. And I didn't actually plan on making a video on it because I had nothing to say about a clearly inferior Thor movie. But I did have something I wanted to say about the discourse that I noticed because it was frustrating me that people were giving exactly the same complaints about this movie when those exact same things were present in Ragnarok, which is a movie I heard pretty much the same people praising. So I'm not saying never talk about these things. If we all just stopped talking about things we thought were bad, there would only be positive reviews out there, and how is that helpful? I'm not saying always constantly be thinking about whose pocket you're putting money into. That's no way to live. I'm not saying stifle your free speech. If you have something to say, of course, say it. Not that you need my or anyone else's permission to do so. Just stop unintentionally promoting things you know are bad. Because if they already have our subscription and they see that nobody is talking about a show they made, that show is going to quietly disappear. They are going to have to find other ways to get people talking, and hopefully it will be about the art rather than whatever hot button issue is raising people's hackles this week. In terms of art, this trend will die eventually, and that's all it is. It's a trend, and all trends die out. But if this one is an old beat-up car just chugging along, the least we can do is stop putting fuel in the damn thing. And I do use we here. I'm guilty of this too. I mean, I've never put a video on my channel about something I purposefully hate watched. But as an example, I'm going to talk about The Big Green Legal Machine, a show that I am not going to name, nor will I name any shows that I have no intention of watching in this video. But I was quite excited for that show until I saw an article saying, we were going to write the courtroom scenes, but then we realised that we didn't know how to write courtroom scenes, so we just didn't. Or something to that effect. And again, I'm talking to the people above the writers who are hiring them and making these decisions. Why would you hire writers who have no experience in, nor the inclination to write courtroom scenes, if your show has a subtitle that contains the word law and a synonym for lawyer in it? I don't know how anyone who read that article could possibly have watched that show after that. But even though I didn't watch it, I kept clicking on YouTube videos about it because I had morbid curiosity surrounding just how bad it was going to be. And I was doing this, obviously, if you know what show I'm talking about, very, very recently, until I started writing this and, much like the Disneyland example, realised, what the hell am I doing? So I am done. I am not going to be clicking on or endorsing in any other fashion media that I know was made with low effort, is going to be low quality, and that I know I'm not going to like. I'm done. So I live, or at least try to live, by a very simple rule when choosing the media I watch. And I want to be clear before I go any further that I did not make this video to preach to anyone. I have been often informed that I can come across as the head teacher who's given yeah right telling off, but as I just said, I am equally as guilty as this. Despite telling people in my daily life to do this, sometimes I don't even do it. So I think the key is just trying to be more conscious about what you watch and what you choose to talk about. And as I said, that is going to be different for everyone. So I'm going to leave you with this. I don't watch things I expect to disappoint me. And you shouldn't either. Your time is more valuable than that. And thanks for spending a little bit of it with me.